Something to that. The quality on this GoPro stuff is amazing. Right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
good.
great. Especially the fact that this isn't just being enlarged. Like what it is on a laptop is probably made like even better.
Oh, it's very good.
I don't know why you keep using those like 144p videos from Stanford sailing or whatever. They're like 14 years old.
Well, you can count the pixels.
Because
Yeah,
they
you can't
could.
even see them.
What if you can't even see it?
It's so low resolution.
Find me better resolution. We have to make. Well, we have to make our own.
No, I think.
Find me better. Find me
I
better
think
resolution.
Squire
Find me
sailing
better
is Spider-Man.
I found one.
Squire
actually.
sailing.
Squire sailing?
Yeah.
Is he good?
It's, I don't know, it's like the same type of content as,
Is it really?
I think it's Squire sailing.
Yeah, he's the guy who.
There's a lot of shorts. They're not all shorts though. I think there are actual
Shorts. Squire sailing.
Most of it's like 470s.
It's mostly
and stuff,
470s.
But there are 420s. There's no FJs.
Like this thing, like the acceleration.
Nice roll and coordination
That's better
there,
quality.
good power on the flatten,
Yeah.
bit of rudder
Yeah.
velocity.
I mean,
Nice
you can
power
keep using
coming from the
Stanford
crew,
sailing.
great flat.
No, this is good. This is good. No, this is fine. I mean, this is something different too, which is nice.
It's hard to have big roll in a downturn when the fleet's super tight, but making some nice space above.
Okay. Okay, we can come back to this. We'll keep them on standby there. We're going to talk about sail controls. And but this will illustrate the purpose for now. Okay, so. What are the sail controls? What sail controls exist? Sheet. Okay.
Yeah.
Sheet. Okay, so both. Alright, so for the main sail, you have the main sheet. So yes, that is a sail control. You're right. So we have the main sheet. What else?
Jib sheet.
Okay.
Or jib sheet is. Or
Yeah,
jib
okay.
sheet.
Okay.
That's
Can we talk about the alright, can we talk about the main let's talk about the main sail for right now. Okay, yeah, so outhaul, the Vang, and what's the other one? The Cunningham, right. Cunningham. Okay, so, let's just, I guess I can just, actually, no, I do want to do that. So, right? So you have your mainsail. Okay? This is so your mast is here, so this is the front of your mainsail. What is the bottom part of the sail called? What? No. The boom is the boom.
The foot?
The foot, yes. Right. What is the front part of the sail called? The reason why we're doing this is because we just want to know these terminologies, these terms, so that we talk about what the sail controls do. They influence different parts of the sail. So what did you say, Jeff? The luff, yes. So the front is called the luff. That's kind of easy to remember because that's the part of the sail that's going to luff first. And then how about the back edge of the sail?
The leech.
The leech, right. Okay. So we're gonna go back to the main sheet in a second. Let's talk about the outhaul. So the outhaul adjusts which part of the sail? It adjusts the foot. It adjusts the bottom part of the sail, right? So your outhaul is, so this adjusts the foot. So when you loosen the outhaul, that means the foot of the mainsail is looser, which means that it has a bigger pocket, right? It's fuller. It's not as flat. The bottom part of the sail. So this part, right? When you tighten the outhaul, you're doing what you're doing is you're flattening that foot. You're flattening the bottom part of the sail, and that's doing two things. Number one, that flattening, anytime you're flattening the sail, you're doing what? What's another kind of like synonym for flattening? Or like, what are we trying to do when we pull these sail controls tighter? What are we trying to accomplish?
Depower the boat.
Depowering, right? We're trying to make the sail less powerful. So a flatter sail is going to be less powerful. So the outhaul, if we want, and so in order to do that to the entire sail, we got to go, individual sail controls to go individual areas of the sail to get the whole sail flat. The outhaul is going to do the foot, right? So that's going to make it depowered on the bottom part of the sail, on the foot. What it's also going to do is when the sail is, so a flatter sail, flat leach, rounded, yeah, all right, so like kind of an example here, right? If you look between this example, so this is a kind of from the top looking down, right, on the sail profile. So here you have a, well, actually, if you look here, right, everything is, the whole sail shape is rounder, right? It's fuller. When you look here, it's kind of fuller towards the, so this is going to be your mast, right? So this is going to be your luff, and then the leech coming back to the end of the boom. So it's fuller here, but then this sail shape, right? Everything gets flatter, 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 flatter. So if we're trying to go upwind, right? How does the sail work? Like, what's actually happening? Like an airfoil, right? You're generating lift. So a more efficient airfoil is, so what's a more efficient airfoil? Something that's going to be more kind of tapered and flatter, or something that's going to look very full and round? The first one, right? So if your sail shape is, if your sail is shaped such that it is very full and very round, that's going to be a very powerful sail shape, right? So that'll translate to more speed, but you're going to sacrifice pointing ability, right? Meaning that, let me get my little boats, right? That means that if you are with a full sail, with a fuller sail, instead of, right, the wind's coming from here, instead of being able to point like this, you might be only able to point like this, right? If the sail is too full, if it's not flat enough, if you don't have an efficient enough airfoil shape with the sail. So, in a nutshell, right, I mean, ultimately what we're trying to do with the sail controls is we're trying to optimize the sail shape for the given wind condition at the time in order to, and again, right now we're just talking about upwind sailing, right? We'll talk about downwind in a little bit. But for upwind sailing, we're trying to balance the pointing ability, right, with power. Because we can't go all in one direction, right? We can't go full power and just have everything loose. Because then, yeah, we might go much faster, or a degree faster, but we're not going to be able to point as high. And we could do the opposite. We could tighten everything like crazy, right? And have a super, super flat sail and a very, and therefore point higher. But if it's too flat, we're going to sacrifice too much speed, and we're going to be going too slow. So there's somewhere, right, that we're trying to get that balance kind of in the middle, so that we're not sacrificing too much of one or the other. The other, obviously, consideration that that's coming into play here is if it's getting windy to the point where we need to depower, then we're not, the pointing ability thing right? Or like whether we're too tight is kind of irrelevant, because if we're fully hiking and we can't keep the boat flat, we need to just tighten everything, right? And we need to tighten everything to the point where we are depowered enough so that we can keep the boat flat, right? The downside of having the boat still too powered up and healing the boat too much is still greater than maybe a degree or two that, you know, or that you can't point, or you're too, not as much power in the sail. Like at that point, you want to be able to get the boat flat. But this is definitely, these are things to consider for when you're not overpowered, right? And you're just sailing. You need to look at, you should look at the sail controls, and you should think about what does the shape of my sail look like. So what that means is, it doesn't matter. So I'll ask a question. If it's 5 knots of breeze, right? So light wind, to the point where, you know, crew is sitting in the middle of the boat, all that jazz. Am I going to want my outhaul all the way off? Like, am I going to want it as loose as possible when I'm trying to go? And again, caveat here, right? Trying to go upwind. No, right? Because if it's all the way off, right? If I just have it as loose as possible, it's probably going to look something like this, right? It's going to look really, really round. It's going to be too full. So how do you gauge that? Obviously, you can't go up in the air and look down at the sail shape, right? So how do you judge outhaul depth? Well, you judge outhaul depth by how?
Looking at the sail.
Yes, but what? Yes, but like where? Maybe this is a silly question.
Well, that's why they have that line, right? Like a lot of sails just have a line across, like a cord line, so you can kind of see the angle more easily, right? I've seen
On
that
bigger
keel
boats, yes. On bigger boats, they do have those. Yes, yes. But kind of like a rough way to do it on these boats is
Look at the distance from the boom to the.
look at the
foot of
distance,
sail.
right? So look at the distance from the boom to the sail, right? So our sails are loose-footed, right? Most sails are loose-footed. Most mainsails are loose-footed. There are a very small handful of exceptions, like Club 420s that they sail in not high school sailing, but in like junior sailing, like on that circuit, like those are actually not loose-footed names.
And new
Which are
sails
weird.
wouldn't be as loose, right? Or you mean it's like.
No, I
part
mean
of the design of
loose-footed
the
as
sail.
in like the foot of the sail does not go through the track,
Oh.
like all the way
okay.
through the
Oh,
track
I
on the
see.
boom.
Okay.
So again, like most mains are like that, but like C420s, actually the main goes all the way.
Isn't the lightning?
Oh, the Lightning does too. You're right. Yes, the Lightning does as well. So there, it's, you know, you can still obviously see the depth, but you obviously can't use the thing of like, you know, measuring the distance between the boom and the actual sail because they're connected. If it's you just kind of have to eyeball it, right? And what you can do is, and then you can kind of look, you know, you can like look on the leeward side of the sail, and you can definitely get, or you can actually, what you can do is instead of, obviously you can't look down, but you can go
Look up.
You can look up, right? So you can, yeah. So you can go to kind of the back of the boom, right? And you can look up, right? So on the Lightning, it's a little hard, but like on keel boats and stuff, it's actually not that difficult because the boom doesn't run all the way, like the full length of the boat. It usually ends at a certain point, and then you have, you know, at least where the skipper is sitting, maybe even more space. So you could actually look from the end of the boom up, and we'll talk about how you can see the leech with that too. But you can obviously also see your foot profile as well. You can see how flat or full that is. So I think one of the takeaways here is that I think the maximum that you, even in light air, right? The maximum that I would want to have my outhaul out, like the maximum distance that I'd want from the boom to the sail, you know, I think like
Like 6 inches or something.
probably about like something like 6 inches, something like that. Again, like at this point, I mean, I kind of just like eyeball it. Most people just kind of eyeball it. But I think you'll know if it looks really, really baggy to you and it looks like it's really far off the boom, you should probably put some alcohol on. Now, you will get to the point, now as it gets windier and windier, you pull the alcohol tighter and tighter, and now we're talking about with the depowering stage, right, where we're just concerned about getting that foot flat. At that point, you pull the alcohol as tight as you can get it, right, we'll talk about an exception to that in a second, but if you pull the alcohol super duper tight, obviously the distance between the sail and the boom is going to decrease until it probably will be non-existent. But then also what you're going to get is, when it's tightened to a point, is you're going to get like a shelf. Like you're going to get like the sail itself is going to kind of shelf up, like bunch up on the bottom. And that's a super, super tight alcohol. So that would only be for, and I guess we'll go into that right now. So if you're looking to depower and it gets windier, it's not as simple as just, okay, I'm just gonna pull the alcohol, and if it's super windy, just pull the alcohol as tight as I can. What that's gonna depend on is what? Anybody have an idea? So,
Condition-wise?
yes, so other than wind, what else is going on?
Waves.
Right, so waves. So whether you have flat or choppy water, right? So flat water, so flat versus waves. And we know that depending on the wind direction, I mean, we know from sailing in Port Jeff, right? Depending on the wind direction, you could have, if you have 15 to 20 coming from the north, you're gonna have waves. You're gonna, pretty big waves. If you have 15 to 20 coming from the south or from the east, the water's still gonna be pretty flat, right? Yeah, you'll have like, the little waves on the very surface, but you're not getting any swell, right? So that's the difference, right, between flat water and waves. So the question, or the question you have to ask yourself then is, if it's windy and you want to depower, do you think in flat water you can get away with do you think you can tighten the outhaul more or less in flat water versus waves? Or should you tighten it more or less in flat water versus waves? And remember what this is doing, right? This is adjusting the power that you have in this whole bottom section of the sail. What?
No, you can go ahead. Jeff, you can go ahead.
Well, I was gonna
Wait,
say, I guess, would you want it tighter, cause then it's,
Which one?
like, in waves, you want it tighter, cause then there's more power up at the top of the sail, or towards the top of the sail. I don't know.
Well, okay, right now we're just isolating this, right? I mean, obviously, you're gonna have these other sail controls are gonna start to flatten out the top.
Well,
Yeah.
but wouldn't
So-
like a really tight outhaul like move the depth up though too, kind of, or not really?
It'll move
Or
the
the
depth
depth
up,
or
yes,
outside,
but then
that's
you're gonna
what I
have, right, but then remember, this isn't happening in isolation,
Oh, okay,
right?
also the
You
Vang.
are gonna have you're gonna put Vang on, you're gonna have Cunningham on.
Okay.
But right now, we're isolating this bottom part of the sail, right? So, do you need more power to get through waves, or do you need more power to get through flat water? Waves, right? So, again, so this does not mean that if there's waves and it's super windy, you just don't want to tighten your outhaul. That's not what this means. What it means is that you can get away with a tighter outhaul in flat water versus in waves, right? So in waves, you don't want to tighten it as much, so don't tighten as much. So you want to leave a little depth. You want to leave a little bit of power when you're going through waves. So basically, like, if I was going through waves, I would not want to pull the alcohol so tight to the point where it's just like, you know, bone tight with that big crease on the bottom, right? I would want to I would want to tighten it, yes, like I definitely want to tighten it and decrease the distance between the boom and the sail, like all that. But I want to leave a little bit of power there so that the boat will be able to go through the waves a little bit easier.
Yeah, I noticed that, I mean, last weekend.
Yeah.
I had, because I would tighten alcohol all the way, and then I saw the, like, shelf thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Okay.
I loosened it a little bit, but that's just because the shelf looked weird, so I figured.
Okay.
But
The answer to that is, I would say that the conditions last weekend in the afternoon,
Yeah,
right, when it picked up,
you did want something.
I think that was, you know, it was fortuitous that you said, yeah, okay, right, that shelf looks a little weird, because you did want a little bit of depth, because there were waves,
Yeah,
right? And the thing is, like, if you depower the sail too much, you will have, in conditions like waves, you'll have a harder time getting the boat to actually get through them, right? You need a little more power and a little more speed to actually kind of get through and over the waves instead of just kind of like plowing into them and just kind of stalling out. So, does that make sense? And again, this is all like, you read this stuff. There's this is all kind of like experimentation on the water, right? The whole point of why we're going over this and why this is important to know is not really to like memorize a formula for all of this. It's just to kind of understand what the overall concepts are of what these are doing, and then you can then play around with these on the water when you're sailing in various conditions, right? And kind of and have that in your toolbox to say like, okay, we're not feeling fast right now. Could it be, let's go through all these different things and see, and make some adjustments to a couple of them and see if that improves the situation. Okay, so Outhaul makes sense. Okay, let's do Cunningham, because this is also fairly straightforward. Cunningham does what? Adjusts which part of the sail? The luff. Right? Luff, but I don't think you're deep in thought.
Huh? No,
You have a
I'm
question?
no, I'm good. I'm
Oh,
good.
you're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Right? So the Cunningham adjusts the luff of the sail, right? Because it's located over here, and when you pull down on the Cunningham, it pulls down on the luff. And if you pull down so if you don't have any Cunningham on, what you'll notice is that along the luff, so from the mast kind of back a couple inches, you'll notice that there's probably like a bunch of wrinkles, right? Just like wrinkles in the sail. And that's fine. For, like lighter breeze, that's good. As the wind starts to pick up, and you want to start to get a flatter sail, you would kind of pull the Cunningham just to kind of get rid of those wrinkles. The other side, right? All of these things on older sails, you'd want to start tightening controls on older sails a little bit sooner than you would on newer sails. Because older sails, the fabric starts to stretch, right? And so ultimately, because of that stretch, they're in just a more fuller shape to begin with than normal. And so you need to put some sail controls on just to kind of get the shape kind of back to like what a newer sail would kind of be at baseline. So that's why, like, when you look at our the sails that we practice with, those are obviously old. They're really used, really blown out. If you don't have, particularly with the Cunningham, if you notice, like, if you don't put any Cunningham on, there's there's a ton of wrinkles, it just looks very, very, very full, right? So there it's like, I would say, kind of just default at all times would be just to have some Cunningham tension on with those sails and just older sails in general, just to give you some shape, right? Because if you don't have any on and the sail is so stretched out, it's kind of just like a bag. And again, like we talked about before, that's not then efficient aerodynamically. But, right, so Cunningham, pull that down, you're gonna get, and then as it gets windier and windier, you wanna pull it down tight to the point where you're getting, like on the outhaul, you get the crease like this, you get a horizontal crease. On the Cunningham, if you pull it tight enough, you'll get a, which I think you can on these. See this more like on lasers and stuff like that, where you have like a lot of purchase on the Cunningham. But you can do it on these too. Just pull it hard enough, you'll get a vertical crease along the luff. And what's happening is it's also flattening out this whole part of the sail, right? So, right, if you think, right, so I've tightened my Cunningham, so I'm flattening the foot, then the outhaul is flattening the foot, Cunningham is flattening the luff. What it's also doing is, so you're also moving, the Cunningham particularly, right, is, well, the outhaul is too, but the Cunningham moves the draft of the sail. So the draft just being the deepest part of the sail, right? Which area of the sail is the deepest, right? From the from your center line to your sail. And so, I realized we never actually talked about this. We should actually go. I'm just going to draw this quickly here. Nope, that's not what I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw this. I'm going to draw a boat. That's terrible. Hold on. I'm going to draw whatever. You get the point. Yeah, you get the point. I know, it's terrible. Rudder or whatever.
The rudder's tiny.
I know, I'm aware. It's a very big sail, but, no, wait. Is that one? Oh, wait, yeah. 1, 2, 3, right, we get the point. It's also, yeah, for some reason it's not attached.
Just
But
give it a little bounce for it.
the jib is just, yeah, the jib is not attached.
Yeah, it's fine. It doesn't need to be.
It's fine, it's just flying around. Okay, so we just want to talk about this quickly. So you have, you have two areas of force, right? Two areas of forces that are allowing the boat to go forward, ultimately, right? Because they're essentially canceling each other out. You have your center of effort, which is going to be the kind of your deepest part of your sail plan, right? So it's called like your center of effort, kind of here-ish.
I assume that's like the average of the mean.
It's it would be the average of the main of the jib, right? And then you have your center of lateral resistance, which is, those look like two L's. CL. You have your center of lateral resistance, which is usually just kind of like right in front of the centerboard, or your keel if it was a keel boat. So if these are in line with each other, the boat is going to go straight, right? If they're not in line with each other, and obviously the one that we can really change is going to be your center of effort, right? Because our sail is a lot more adjustable than, we can't, other than moving our centerboard up and down, we can't move it forward and aft. We obviously can't move our keel forward and aft, right? So this, from all intents and purposes, is staying the same. But our center of effort can either be in line with our center of lateral resistance, it could be behind it, or it could be in front of it, right? Is it in front or in back? Actually, I always forget. Regardless,
It's gotta be behind it, right?
It's gotta be
The
behind
mean's
it, yeah.
so much bigger. and
yeah, it's got to be
most of
behind
the
it.
mean
Yeah. We're gonna say it's behind it. We're gonna say it's behind it.
Because the rudder is also acting
Yeah.
for lateral.
No, it's definitely behind it. it's upside down in front. Yes, that makes a lot more sense. So the draft of the draft of our mainsail is gonna have a direct impact on where our center of effort is. So what the Cunningham does when you tighten it is it moves the draft forward. Right? So it moves it this way, which means it's going to move your center of effort this way. It's going to move it forward of your center of lateral resistance.
Wait, why does it move it forward?
Because it does.
But if it's flattening the luff, wouldn't that be shifting it backwards?
It shifts it forwards.
Okay. Because of the way it is.
Because of the way
The best explanation, because I said, because it just sounds about right.
it shifts it, if you do it on the sail, you'll see that it moves the draft forward.
Okay.
Trust me, it moves it forward.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know how else to explain. I mean, like, that's just the way that it physically works.
Okay.
It's just
Just say physics.
Yeah.
Physics.
That works for me.
physics. Yes. So, okay, let's think about this for a second. So, if your center of lateral resistance, if that's fixed, right? So let's say you envision that the boat is kind of that this is like a kind of like a rod, right? That the boat can kind of swivel on, right? It can go, so the boat can swivel on this. It can come out of the board. It can go into the board, right? It can spin on it, right? So that's your fixed point. If my center of effort is in front of the center of lateral resistance, right? So if I had my boat like this, right? And then, right, so, it's gonna rotate like this. If I had it in front of the center of lateral resistance, it's gonna do what to the boat? It's gonna turn the boat which way?
Away or down.
It's gonna head the boat, right, it's gonna head the boat down. And then vice versa. If the center of effort was behind the center of lateral resistance, it would actually turn the boat up. What is turning the boat up? What is that? If you feel like the boat is pulling you upwind, like towards the wind. Everyone know what that's called? Weather helm. Yes. Right? So, when you are sailing in more breeze, you want to eliminate or you want to reduce the weather helm. So that's why you want to move your center of effort more forward. Because you don't want to be fighting the tiller or the tiller wants to head up and it wants to head you up into irons. Right? You want the way that the sail plan is adjusted at that point to be helping you by actually heading the boat down.
What's the name for the opposite? Weather helm?
Lee helm.
But
Yeah.
that like never happens though, right? I don't think I've ever noticed that.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like I haven't really noticed that much
Is
either.
that just part of the design of the boat?
I think that's part of the design of the boat that
Because it's safer for it to try to round up.
it's safer for, right, yeah, that makes, exactly. So, Cunningham tightening is gonna move the draft forward, it's gonna move your center of effort forward, which is gonna help reduce weather helm when it's windy. Also going to, like you said, it's gonna flatten the sails out too and make them less powerful. So, all that is good and all that makes it easier to control the boat when it's breezier. Okay, so that's Outhaul and Cunningham. Now we're going to talk about the Vang and the main sheet. Okay? So, yes, Michael. go.
Yeah, can I ask a question about the Outhaul?
Absolutely not. Yes.
No. So before you said that if we have less Outhaul,
Yes.
we might not be able to point as high,
Yes.
right? But I thought the
Right.
faster we're going, the higher we can point. So how does that work?
Like if it's windy because you can like pinch more, you're saying? Or
Yeah. I mean, not pinching, but just.
So
just
right, the faster you're going, the higher. Yes, but then there's a point where just the overall shape of the overall shape that you have the sail aerodynamically, right? There's a limit to how much the speed will translate to point for that given aerodynamic shape,
I see.
right? So it's like I could go, you know, and again, maybe this is wrong physics, but like, you know, I could, if it was like really, really baggy, right?
Mhm.
If I was trying to, you know, I mean, I would assume I would assume this is coming from someone who doesn't know physics that well, but I would assume there's a point where there will be an airplane wing shape, right, where it's not going to work, right? That you could go faster, you could go to a certain
It would
speed.
stall, right?
It would just it would just stall, right? That you wouldn't, no matter how fast you pushed it through the air,
Mhm.
that you're not going to you won't generate the lift needed,
I see.
right? So we're kind of talking about like extremes here, right? So and this is right the extreme of like you can't have the sail if you're trying to sail upwind, no matter what the condition, you can't have it too baggy, right? Too full, because no matter how windy it is, you're not going to be able to generate the lift because you don't have the correct shape.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. That actually sounds like that makes sense to me.
I mean,
Yeah.
because like
Right.
like airplane wings, I mean, like a fighter jet has a much flatter airfoil shape than like a Cessna or whatever.
Right.
Because it,
Yes.
because it can, but it can like make up for a lack of lift just with like power.
Right, but there's a
So
certain
it's-
point where it's like you
so
can't
it's
make
not
it, but you
bad.
can't make it you can't make that wing too big, like too, you know, round.
Yeah.
Uh,
Then it would just stop producing.
Then it would just stop producing lift. Right. So just as a quick aside, right? I mean, and this is kind of easier to think about, right? Downwind, right? If we're going downwind, we're not generating lift, right? The sails are working by just the wind pushing on the sail. So we want a fuller sail when we're going downwind. When we're going downwind, we're not concerned about trying to generate the aerodynamic lift. And so, ideally, if we had everything tight on the upwind, we would want to loosen stuff a bit going downwind, right? All of these sail controls. I think, you know, personally, I don't think that, you know, the most important one really would be like the Vang. I think the Outhaul and Cunningham on these boats probably a little less important. I mean, unless you really have like the Outhaul like completely strapped, like, you know, and you want, I think loosening it a bit downwind will give you a little more power. But you have to balance that with, you have to make sure that whatever you take off going downwind, you're going to be able to get that back on before you go back upwind, right? So to me, it's like, you know, I would rather sail with maybe a little bit, you know, like a little bit too much outhaul, like textbook wise, like, but I'm not going to be concerned about trying to make sure I remember to get that back on when I round the leeward mark. If you're going to remember that, fine, right? You just got to make sure you get it back on. And I think, you know, ultimately it will give you a faster, fuller sail shape if you loosen these controls when you're going downwind. But you have to remember to put them back on when you turn back up, or else you're gonna, so you ease your outhaul a bunch when you're going downwind, then you round the leeward mark and you forget to put it on. Then we're talking about this scenario where you have a super baggy sail and you're trying to go upwind now, and then you know, after, if you haven't noticed, after, you know, a minute, you're gonna be like, well, why the heck did we just get outpointed by, you know, 5 boats that like had worse roundings than us? And it's just like, oh wow, it's because our sail is, you know, my sail's like, you know, 1.5 feet off of the boom. Obviously that you probably noticed that like pretty quickly. But just something to keep in mind, right? If you're gonna take it off, gotta put it back on. If it's the same wind conditions, right? Obviously, if it lightens up a ton while you're sailing downwind, you know, then maybe you're not putting as much alcohol and cunningham back on when you turn back up around the leeward bar. It's all dependent. Okay, so now we get to talk about the Vang, and the Vang adjusts probably the most talked about part of the sail for sail shape. You hear a lot of people talk about the leech, right, and the shape of the leech, and leech profiles. So essentially, right, leech profile means what does it look like when you look from the back of the boom up to the top of the mast, right? And what does the profile of the leech look like? Is it, and so it could be, you could have a more open leech, and you can have a more closed leech. A more open leech will be where it's, these are kind of good pictures. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Right, so if you look at the one on the left here, right, this is trying to, or this is depicting a more closed leech, right, versus the one on the right. So when you follow the leech up, notice how this is a more open leech. So as you get up, this line, right, starts to kind of go out more, right, and even at the top here, right, it kind of bows out. You can see more of the sail here, right? It's not as, whereas here, this is more like hooked, right? So that's more closed. Here it's more open. It's not as hooked, right? That top like third of the sail, that top third of the leech is more open. So and so the Vang directly correlates to how much Vang you have on will correlate to whether you have an open or a closed leech. So more Vang will translate to a what? A closed leech. Yes. If I have more Vang on, my leech will get more closed. Less Vang on, my leech will get more open. So the main sheet actually does something very, very similar, pretty much the same thing. Because what is the Vang doing? Pulling down on the boom. What is the main sheet doing when you're pulling a lot of main sheet tension on? Pulling down on the boom, right? So both are adjusting and influencing your leech tension. So if it is, so okay, which leech profile would I want if I'm trying to point high? Do I want a more open leech or do I want a more closed leech? I'd want it more closed. Right? Again, because it's like everything looks more aerodynamic there, right? On this versus this. This is a more open leech, gives you a little fuller sail here, right? And remember, fuller translates to more power. So if I'm trying to, so if I want more power, right? Or if it's lighter wind, so if it's lighter wind and I want more power, I want a more open leech in order to generate more of that power, right? If it's lighter wind, I'm focused at that point I'm trying to get speed, right? And I'm not trying to point at that given moment, right? If I'm trying to point, I'm gonna end up going too slow, right? So if it's light wind and I trim my vang really tight and I trim my main sheet really tight, I'm gonna have a very closed leach. If it's really light wind, what I can get is the leach will actually hook to windward. So here, like it's more closed, but it's still kind of open, right? You're still getting flow. But if it's really light wind and I don't have enough wind to keep pushing that leach out when it's really light, and I pull the main sheet really hard and pull the vang really hard, the top of the sail will hook to windward, and it'll be like completely closed off. So what happens then is the wind that's coming from the front of the sail here, as it flows, it can't exit, right? It just kind of gets trapped, and then you just get like turbulence there, and turbulence equals slow, right? Again, this is all kind of a balancing act, right? And this is all stuff that's constantly changing, right? You should be constantly making adjustments because the wind is constantly changing, right? So up to a certain point, right? I mean, you can't, I would say there's a certain point where you don't want to get like super tunnel vision on this when you're racing, because if you're sitting there trying to get like everything perfect, but then like you miss a wind shift or like and that's worse than eking out the 0.2 knots of extra speed that you might get by getting something perfect, right? So I think we're not looking for like perfection of the sail shape, but what we're looking for is, I think, trying to get everything more or less in the ballpark at any given time. And so the other thing that's happening, right, when you're putting more vang on, is you're bringing the boom down, you're bending the mast actually a little bit, but you're flattening out this whole middle part of the sail too, right? So the more vang you put on, the flatter that middle part of the sail is going to be. And what you'll actually start to see is, if you put a lot of vang on, you'll see some diagonal creases, kind of like from like the midpoint of the mast-ish, kind of down, like towards the back edge of the sail. That's when you have a lot of vang on. You see that very commonly, like in lasers and stuff, because those vangs are very, very adjustable, and you can put a lot of vang tension on those boats. You can't. There's a certain amount of, and you'll still get those creases if you put enough vang tension on FJ or a 420. I think the newer 420s that we've sailed a couple times at some of these schools that have the vang led back to the traveler bar, those have a little more purchase, and you can get a little more vang tension on those. For the traditional type of, for the vang sitting in the middle, like on our boats and on all FJs, even brand new FJs, that they're designed like that, Vanguard 15s, the whole thing. It's a little harder to get a lot of vang on. If you want to get a lot of vang on, what should you do? Pull the main sheet in, because remember, that's also pulling the boom down, right? So pull the main sheet in super tight if you want to get a lot of vang on. While that main sheet is in super tight, boom will come down. You notice the vang will go like slack, right? And then take all the slack out of the vang, cleat it. Now all of a sudden, what you're going to notice is you have more vang on. The middle part of the sail will be flatter. You might get some diagonal creases, but you'll also notice, if you have a lot of vang on, when you ease. So normally, right, when you ease the main sheet, the boom. So if I pull the main sheet, if I have no vang on at all, right, just no vang tension on really, and I pull the main sheet super tight, the boom comes down. When I ease it, boom comes up. If I have the vang on super tight, what will happen is when I ease, the boom won't come up. Instead of the boom coming up and out, it'll just go out. Now, you can't really, so that's called vang sheeting. You can't really do that super efficiently with these boats, you can't get enough bang tension on. There's not enough purchase to do it. You'll probably end up breaking something. If you try, actually, no, you probably wouldn't break something, but I just don't know if you could physically do it. But you can definitely get it to the point where the boom is coming up less, right? Why is that important? When would you do that? You would do that, obviously, when it's windier, right? When it's windier, that's when you want more bang tension on, right? And so what it's doing by preventing the boom from coming up is it's keeping the leach more closed, right? It's not opening up. So when the boom comes up, when you ease the main sheet, that opens up the whole top part of the leach, and it gives you more power. But if it's windier, we don't want that, right? We don't want that much power. We want to keep everything as kind of flat as possible, but we obviously still have to ease the main sheet because we're still going to need to do that in order to help keep the boat flat. But we want our easing the main sheet to go just complete depower instead of giving us more power at the top. Does that kind of make sense? So, to boil this down, I think to kind of like first principles, or like, what are you looking for, right? So, I'm gonna erase this. I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna do like a thing here. So light air, right? So if it's light, so light air. For the if it's light air, we want what leach wise, or like sail profile wise. We want it deeper, right? So we would want less bang, right? Less bang because we want. So the other term, right, is an open or closed leach. The other term you'll hear that's kind of synonymous with that is twist, right? So the more open the leach profile is, the people say, well, there's more twist, right? And what does that twist refer to? It just refers to the fact that instead of with a closed leach, it's more of a straight line. You kind of get, it starts to twist open at the top, right? So less bang. So you want more twist because you want power at the top, right? And you also want the flow, right? You want the wind, you want the air to be able to flow efficiently over the top of the sail. If it's super closed, it's not going to be efficient. It's going to essentially run into a wall when it hits the upper part of the leach, and you're going to get turbulence, and we don't want that. So light. So then medium. Right. So medium. We're going to put some. Right. So we would gradually tighten the bang. Gradually tighten bang. Because we want. We want less twists. We want to start closing. The leach. Start closing leach. Why? Because once it gets to kind of medium wind, that's going to be our most efficient condition, right? To actually start pointing upwind, right? Again, all of this is upwind, right? These sails are all going upwind. So here is where you start to you want to try to start to skew the balance more towards pointing and less towards power, right? You want to try to get as much point as possible out of it, right? Then as you get to heavy wind, you just want basically crank the bang. Crank the bang. And obviously, crank everything else too. Because actually what you're doing here is you're actually gonna get You're actually gonna get a little twist at the top, which is actually good when it's super windy, because you actually kind of want to spill the breeze off. But what you're doing here is you're keeping the boom down, right? So you're keeping the boom down, and you're depowering the middle of Maine. The middle of Maine. And yeah, so if you're sailing along, right, and you feel like you're starting to go slower upwind, right? So the reason why I would always tell you guys, you know, when we're sailing, it's like, okay, you know, when you sail into a lighter spot, why I tell you to ease the sail a little bit, ease the main sheet a little bit. This is why, right? It's to get the boom up, generate a little more twist, get a little fuller shape, get a little more power, get a little more flow, and get the boat moving again. Then, what we always say is, well, once you're moving again, you want to start trimming in the sail again. Why? Because at that point, you have enough power, you're starting to actually generate the speed, and you want to try to then translate as much of that speed as you can into being able to point higher. And then it all starts over again if you sail into a lull, right? Or sail into less breeze and you start to feel, and so essentially, right, you're making almost constant adjustments with the main sheet, right? I think the main sheet is obviously you're being more dynamic with that than you're being with the other controls, right? You're not going to sit there and like be as dynamic with the Cunningham and the Outhall and even the Vang as you are going to be with the main sheet. But that's essentially what you're doing when you're easing or trimming the main sheet in, light and medium wind, right? When you're trimming it in, you're getting more point by closing the leach, and vice versa. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want to show you one thing here with the. I'm not sure I showed. I'm gonna look up. So the Vang. So the Vang also comes into play downwind with the leech shape. Oh, here we go. Good-ish. Not really what I want.
It's like a top-down picture.
There was?
Yeah.
Side profile. Yeah, this is where's that picture that was in there? Oh, what? Whoa. Who's talking? That's actually kind of good. It's OptiSail. Yeah, okay. That actually demonstrates it, right? So this sail, would you say that this is very twist, a lot of twist, or not a lot of twist? Very open or very closed? Very open. Yes. Right? So the boom is very high, and if you look at, if you could see it from the boom looking this way, you would see that the top part of the leech is really far forward of the bottom part of the leech.
Are Optis gaff rigged?
Yes. They are, yeah. So
how do you, I mean, I guess it has the same function.
It has
for
the
them,
it has the same function,
but
yeah.
you just can't tighten it as much, I guess.
You can't tighten it as much, yeah. It's not as adjustable. Where is oh, here's the- This is actually perfect. This is perfect. This is perfect. Okay, so this is perfect example of too much twist, right? So and this is going downwind, right? And you can see like it's. I mean, here like the bottom is like super far forward, like they went. So you can't do this in a 420 iron actually because they're side stays, right? So you can't like the boom can't go the whole way like forward like that. But if you don't have a lot of vang on going downwind, so the moral of the story here, right, is that twist works the same way downwind, right? You pull more vang on, you get less twist. You put less vang on, you get more twist. So therefore you get more power. So that's why when you go downwind, you do want to ease the vang because you do want to have a little more powerful sail shape. However, when it's really, really windy, you need to have some vang tension on because if it's too twisty, that's where you get very unstable. So if you have like little to no vang on and you're trying to go downwind in a gigantic puff, that's where and you've all experienced it, where the boat starts to feel like it's really unstable, like it's rocking from side to side. It's like, oh God, like we're gonna capsize. And some of that could be weight distribution, right? But some of that will also be if you don't have enough vang on and you just let the main out, what happens is there's so much twist that at the top of the sail, the way that the wind is kind of flowing, it's pushing the boat into a capsize. And the remedy to that is put a little bit of vang on. Right? Doesn't mean that you have to go downwind with even if it's Chibouty, doesn't mean you have to go downwind with the vang like cranked on. That's also not great. Because then the boom is too low, and then if you do like hit a weird wave and you rock and or you heel too much, if the boom is too low, the boom can kind of dig into the water, and then that will also lead to a capsize potentially. But you do want the vang eased to a certain extent. And you can adjust it, right, based on how it feels. So if it feels like, okay, we're rocking too much, like it feels unstable, put a little bit more vang on, and you can also, the other trick is, you can also trim in the main sheet a little bit, right? If you trim in the main sheet a little bit, trim in the main a bit, again, that decreases the twist, right? It closes the leech off a bit, gives you a little more stability. So, what are you trying to do downwind, right? You're trying to ride that edge, right? You're trying to be as powerful, going as fast as possible while still being in control, right? So you're trying to, ideally, you're trying to push it, right? Like you could, if you have the main trimmed in a bit, you have your vang on a little bit tighter, you could sail downwind, very stable, they're a very stable configuration, but you're probably going to go slow.
Yeah, I think last weekend, I could have been more powerful in the downwind.
I agree.
It wasn't scary.
Yeah.
I figured if it's not scary,
I think-
probably could go faster.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to think about it, right? If it's not scary, like if you're going downwind and you're like, okay, like this feels like normal, like we don't, then you can push it a bit with, let's make sure we get the main all the way out. Let's heel the boat a little more to windward. Let's ease the vang a bit more, right? There is a certain thing where, right, same thing like we were talking about with the outhaul, right, where you don't, even in light wind, you don't want to have it super duper far out. With the vang, downwind, you never just want to have it like completely loose. You need some shape in the sail, right? It all goes back to just airflow over it, right? If you need some shape at all times in the sail, or else it's just some amorphous blob of fabric, right, where the wind is not going to be able to efficiently interact with it. And so you never want, you're going downwind, you don't want the vang completely loose ever. Like even in, honestly, like even in super light wind, right? A lot of times when you have it, you guys all experience this. When you jibe, when it's really light, and the top batten it stays inverted the wrong way. How do you fix that? Put a little bit of vang tension on, right? Think about it. Where is that top batten? That top batten is at that top, like, third of the leech. So when you're pulling down on the vang, that's closing that part of the leech, putting more tension there where that top batten is. And so when you jibe, it just gives it more form. It gives it more shape there, instead of when there's no vang on. Again, it's just kind of like a blob. It's just like you pull the sail over and there's no tension to pop the batten the correct way. Yeah, so that was good. It's all stuff to look at, right? So again, I think if we get anything from this, what I want you guys to start just considering all these things and looking at all these things when you're sailing and experimenting with it. You know, ask questions. We'll analyze it together in a moment. We'll say like, okay, how does the sail shape look? You know, coach, how does it look like from, what does it look like from outside the boat? Does it look like I have enough vang on? Does it look like I'm really open, really close? All that kind of stuff, right? So I think this is kind of like the next steps to, more intricate sail shape adjustments, which ultimately, lead to increased speed and just increased efficiency, right? And it just gives you more stuff to play with.